Thank you very much for coming to the first of the LexisNexis breakfast forums, which we're holding jointly with the Private Client Dining Club. We have a fantastic multidisciplinary panel of speakers this morning, who are each going to talk about a different aspect of the property sector, and then we're going to have a panel discussion afterwards. So do start thinking up questions as you listen to the speakers. We aim to finish by around 9:30, but if you're not in a hurry to get back to the office, then please stay and have a cup of tea or coffee afterwards. So the first of our speakers is Mike Walker, a private client tax partner at KPMG. Mike leads KPMG's International Private Client Network and their non-dom team. Mike's going to speak to us about new property purchases for UK resident non-domiciliaries, the effect of increased ATED charges on de-enveloping, and some practicalities of ATED compliance. So over to you, Mike.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael. So I've been asked to speak about two subject areas. The process, the thought process when moving to the UK. A number of clients are buying in London because it's considered to be a global asset class, and Knight Frank are far better qualified to speak about that subject than I am. But one of the big questions that actually comes up is nothing to do with tax, quite interestingly. It's often anonymity. So I have an Indian client who's very well known, quite a famous chap, and he said, I can't afford to be in the land registry discuss. So we actually went through a thought process with him about how to stay off the land registry, whether he just used a nominee company or even paid the horrendous 15% stamp duty and the annual charges and risk the CGT going forward. So we do have a significant number of clients who've taken the decision to swallow the tax because they actually say other issues are more important to them. You go through a process of, I think, dealing with naivety. So you have a number of clients who will say things like, so I say, when you buy UK real estate, you walk into an IHT liability because real estate is, the tax on real estate is very adhesive. And they say, but I will be in the UK on the day I die, Mike. And I say, well, how many are you going to die? And they say, actually, a very good point. But there is a serious point here about how long you're going to own the property, whether it will actually be in your estate. The classic situation that ATED was designed to catch was offshore companies. And offshore companies were all about IHT. They said there was this major stamp duty avoidance going on. It wasn't about stamp duty avoidance. If you funded the company bought the property, you paid the stamp duty. It was never about that at all. And I sat on the step technical committee on it for a number of years, and a number of meetings with the revenue, they actually said things like, this is all about stamp duty. So you go to the next meeting, they say, yeah, it's an IHT measure. Then you go to the next meeting, yeah, it's all about CGT. So even within HMRC, there seemed to be a lot of confusion about what they were actually attacking. So nonetheless, we've got the charges now. So at the moment, we're just encouraging clients to do a health check. We think that people should take a long, hard look at their property structures. There's a couple of questions I want to deal with about what are the questions about when you move into the UK and you're buying a property. Well, it's interesting when you just look back at the recent past because you've got this timeline of 3 years. And so much has happened in 3 years. SDLT was introduced at 15%, properties over 2 million in March 2012. And then we got the ATED. And then we got the IHT debt restriction, which a lot of people forgot about. It wasn't particularly aimed at this, but actually does have an impact on these sorts of structures. We've actually got SDLT going up to covering property, should I say, from more than $500,000. We've got the changes on CGT main residence relief, changes to debt remittance rules, which are still unresolved. There's another paper just come out to the various technical committees. So an ATED going up and the property limits coming down. So the answer to a lot of these questions is, gosh, it is confusing for a lot of clients because there's so many factors to take into account. And the government are actually very pleased with where they've got to, because if I can just sort of conclude on this, we go through all these steps really, saying, so what's your inheritance tax exposure? Is that a key issue for you? Are you going to be affected by the ATED? Yes, obviously you are if you've got it in a corporate structure. We ask a lot of questions here. So will you be affected by the introduction of CGT for non-residents? Potentially so. We've got this new mismatch really with CGT and non-residents. So they now say, well, spend 90 days in the UK and you can make the principal private residency election. So will that make a UK resident overall for tax purposes? It's quite a thought process you've got to go through now to make the right decision or help the client make the right decision. I mean, I think the answer that I would leave you with on all that is complicated and it depends on the client's circumstances about how long they're going to stay in the UK and so on. And then, also as well, whether they're children moving in and that kind of thing, a lot of people don't want their children to inherit vast sums in property. So the answer is you go through a thought process with the client to get to the right answer. Now, ATED's interesting because ATED has had quite an interesting short life. This slide doesn't come up totally on the screen, but to give you the highlights, total government tax receipts are just under £460 billion in 13-14. The most interesting bit is actually this column because it's blank all the way down there until you get to there, which is the annual tax on envelope dwellings. And it's now showing government tax receipts as a new tax. So it's now shown as a new tax that produced in 13-14 £100 million. Can anybody tell me what the original estimate was for ATED? It was about 25 to 30 billion pounds. So, sorry, billion pounds. So it's 100 million. 100 million was supposed to produce 25 to 30 million. So they're now saying, oh great, to produce 4 times as much tax as we expected. That's at the old rate, because now of course we've got a 50% increase. They said it was going to go up in the autumn statement, was it something like 50% above inflation? It's supposed to be a factor of 1.5 times. When you do the table, the ATED has gone up by 50%. So that figure is going to go up. That'll go up to at least 150 million next year. So ATED isn't going away. It's dead easy to collect. The next question I was asked to deal with was, will people de-envelope as a result? Actually, that's quite hard in many circumstances. It's quite difficult because you go back to the same questions about the new purchases, which are, what's your objective? Is it about anonymity? Is it about saving IHT? Is it about asset protection for the family? So if you came along this morning expecting a whole bunch of magic answers to the questions, I'm afraid I haven't got any at all. Apart from get the client's circumstances, find out what they are, and then you've got to go through a thought process to get there. But ATED will not go away. Of course, what have they done? They've doubled the rate, but the bands have changed as well. So if I was to hazard a guess, I would say that 100 million figure is going to be at least 200 million for 14-15, and possibly more. And it's just an easy tax to collect. So there's endless debates on mansion tax. Well, I would say we've actually got them. But I think there's no way that we will see a decrease in ATED or an abolition. I think to the future of it, I think it's pretty certain it will stay. If I was in the Labour government, or was a Labour government, I was a Prime Minister, which I won't be. I'd just put it even further. It's such a soft target. It's so easy to collect tax from. So that 100 million, where's it come from? Well, at the moment, that's not really broken down. We don't kind of have a breakdown. I mean, I think we can probably get this information with the Freedom of Information Act, but there isn't a breakdown of that 100 million, number of properties, values, and so on and so on. It'll be interesting if and when we do get that information, because I think the position going forward is it's going to be about, so I was asked about non-compliance. Have we seen much non-compliance? You don't see it until somebody complies, do you? So it's a bit of a strange question in some respects, but so have I come across people coming to the party very late? Yes, I have. So I've seen a significant number of clients who, I mean, yeah, you've got a guy who sits in Dubai and he's got a UK property in South Kent, Belgravia or somewhere, and it's an offshore structure. He doesn't know he's got a liability. He just doesn't know he's got a liability. So how do you enforce it is the next question. So I would imagine at some point there's going to be a task for the government which is going to go through the land registry and try and identify all the properties that are owned by offshore companies, and then send out nice letters, or threatening letters, to offshore companies. And because obviously what they'll see in the land registry is the offshore company will see the directors and their address. So if I was to make a prediction, it would be a flood of letters to companies in the BVI or offshore jurisdictions saying, do you know you've got an ATED liability and do you realise you haven't complied? So I'm going to leave it there because I've left you with a lot of thoughts. You probably expected a lot of answers, but hopefully some thought for things going forward.